Hi, so here's a sample of the finished digital mandala. It should look like a kaleidoscope or a snowflake. It's the repetition of shapes and images that are put on a wedge shape. And the wedge shape is repeated 12 times, flipping each time. So it has a kaleidoscope kind of look, or like a snowflake, a very symmetrical look. So there's also a blue background. So I'm going to take you through the steps on how to do this, but I figured I'd show you the end result first, and then we'll go from there. So the first step of this mandala project is to find some images that you want to incorporate. I'm looking for about 10 images, and each of these images is going to be cropped except for one. One is going to be used for the shape of the wedge, sort of like the background shape of the wedge. So, like I said, 10 images, perfect. You want them to be high resolution. You also want them to be based on a common theme. And you also want them to have a nice variety of colors and textures. So let's start looking for them. So we're going to start by doing a search for an image. So let's say I want to incorporate a roller coaster, because my theme is going to be summer vacation, things I do. So I'm going to do a Google search for roller coaster, go to images. So one of the things we're looking for is high resolution. So to make sure that we find just high resolution, we go over here to tools, size, large, and now I'm going to start looking for an interesting picture. So if you find something that you might want to use, and you can always find a couple and narrow it down later on, but here's one that I like to use. So I click on it. Then in this space right here, I'm going to right click and open image in new tab. Then I go to the new tab. So you know that it's a high enough resolution because it covers the entire page here. Okay, it fills up the entire screen. So it's at this point now, I'm going to right click and save image as. If you haven't already, you should on your desktop have a folder in your period 1 folder or period 5 folder, depending. And you are going to make a new folder in there called Mandala or Digital Mandala. And this is where you're going to be saving your images. So I'll do the process one more time. Let's say that I want to find a barbecue. Tons of ways to spell it. So I go to tools, size, large, and I'm going to go back, find something that looks like a barbecue, because summertime we do a lot of grilling. So this looks yummy, and it also looks colorful. That's another thing. Wow, I can look at this all day long. So let's see. This one has a watermark. I want to probably avoid that. This one's good. Right click, open image in new tab. Okay, this isn't big enough. Sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes it takes a while for it to kind of get all set. I'm going to try it one last time. Open image in new tab. Much better. Right click, save image as. And I'm going to save it as something I can identify. Okay. So then in your folder, you should keep finding some images. Again, 8 to 10 images would be very, very good. More on the 10 side. I would absolutely encourage you guys to find more images. So after you find all your images, the next thing we're going to be doing is downloading the wedge and the template. These are going to be 2 images that we're using for tools to construct our mandala. So you can head over to your class, and I have them here. So you're going to click on the wedge, then you come over to the top right to the 3 buttons, select open a new window, and then it gives you that option to download. So you're going to download both of these images. And my suggestion to you is to bring them over to your folder here. Oops. Sorry, didn't mean to bring that over. Okay. So you're going to be all set now once you have your 10 images or so, and then you also have your wedge and your template in the same folder. Okay, now that we have all of our images, we're going to open them up in Photoshop, and we're going to be cropping these shapes. So you don't want to leave them as squares or rectangles, which is what they're going to end up, what they start off being. You want to make them pretty interesting, so there's different ways that you can crop them. So I'm opening them all up in Photoshop. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see. So you can see that they're all pretty much just squares. So one way that you can crop a shape, this one's pretty pixely, but I'm still going to work with it. One way that you can crop a shape is you can remove all of the, the white background around it. So to do this, you can use the magic wand tool, and you can select the white around the outside. Okay. So double check. If you have contiguous checked, you want to probably uncheck it. Otherwise, it would probably start selecting any white areas inside. So right now, contiguous, which means connected, it'll just select what is attached to the outside. And then if you hit delete, it's going to ask you what do you want to fill it with, and you want it to be filled with actually it's not going to let you make it transparent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the layer. Okay, so again, it's selected. Now I hit delete, and it's not going to give me that fill option. It's just going to delete the background. So this would be a much more interesting shape rather than having that white square around it. So one way you can do this is you can just crop the background around it. So now I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this as a cropped image. So what might be a good idea is in your Mandala folder to make a new folder inside and call it cropped. That way it'll keep all of the pictures that you cropped separate. Also, if you notice, it's going to be saved as a PSD. So one way is to just remove the background. So I could do the same thing here. This one, if you notice, this has a white spot inside here. So again, if I go ahead and use the magic wand tool and I crop the outside, you can see it's actually grabbed some of the white from the paintbrush and over here and in spots that I do not want removed because there's the white spot there. So I'm going to check contiguous. So having it checked, it's only going to select what's attached. Okay, so you can see that it also grabbed some of this stuff over here. So I'm going to reduce the tolerance. It's going to select less of the area. That's a little bit better. You can see it's not, there's areas that, like around the shadows, that are going to have to be selected. If I add to selection, I can select that part and that part as well. So, oops, you want to unlock the background by checking on the check. So you can see that it's not really a really good crop. It's got some white spots here, so sometimes it's not going to be as easy. So there's another way that you can crop these besides just using the magic wand tool. You can head over to the polygonal lasso tool. So what you can do is you can manually select a space that you would like to be cropped. So let's say I want it to just be cropped in this kind of zigzaggy kind of pattern. So I'm going to make my selection. I have the marching ants, and now I'm going to hit, I'm going to layer via copy. Layer via copy, sorry. Layer, and you can see new, and here it is, layer via copy. And Command J is the shortcut. So what it did is it made a copy of what I selected. So if I make the background invisible, you can see that's another way to crop it. All right. And again, go ahead and save it. Save it in cropped. Okay. And it's a PSD. So as you crop them, you can X these out just to kind of keep them in check. So what's this? Okay, softball. I could probably just use the magic wand tool, select it, unlock the background, and hit delete. Save as, put it in the cropped folder. This time I'm going to call it softball, so I know it's a picture. Put it in the cropped folder. So you keep on gathering them. So this one here, another way you can do this. So again, you can use the polygonal lasso tool. You can use even the regular lasso tool, and you can make an interesting shape like this. And then you can hit Command J, throw the background in the trash, and then save this. Okay. So here's another one. So again, I want to just get rid of the rectangle. So another way you can do this, besides using the polygonal lasso tool or the magic wand tool, is I can go to the custom shape tool. So the custom shape tool might look different. It's right above the hand tool. You have rectangle, ellipse, triangle, polygon. So you can try out different shapes, but for this demonstration, I'm going to go to custom shape tool. So when you get up here, you want to change some things. You want there to be a fill. So where it says fill, you can make it any color you want. I'm just going to go with a dark blue. With the stroke, I don't want it to have a stroke. Okay, so make sure it has a fill, no stroke, which means no outline. All right, so the shapes are located over here, and you might see that I have a lot of shapes over here. And you might come over here and see that you have no shapes. Okay, so to get those shapes, you have to go to the library and you have to like unload them. So you're going to go to Window and go to Shapes. So it's going to open up this Shapes window. So yours might look very, very different, and you don't have to worry about anything. You might see some folders, right? You might have a folder that says wild animals or boats or flowers. So you can see I have maybe some that you don't have. You can delete groups if you want. I don't recommend them, but I'm deleting them because I have extra ones of those. So to add more than just a couple of them, if you want to see what's available, when you're on this window, you see the stacked lines, click there, and you'll see that there is Legacy Shapes and More. That's one that is a library that's built in, and it's got a lot of shapes, and that's probably all you'll really need. Okay, so if I head over now, I have that folder, Legacy Shapes. I expand it by clicking on the arrow. You have 2019 shapes and all Legacy default shapes. And you can see you have a bunch of different ones here. There's default, there's animals, there's arrows. So you just find something that you might find to be interesting, and you want to make sure that it is a thick shape. You don't want to go with something with a lot of negative space. You want something with a lot of white. So I can go, let's do this one. This one looks interesting. Okay. So I'm going to X out of this. And now I have that shape. And if I come back over here, you should have them built in, so you won't have to open up that window again. So now I just have to move this over. It gets a little tricky because you don't want to make a shape. The shape tool will make a new shape each time you click. So and it's going to be a different layer. So you can see here's my layer. It's difficult to move it around. You have to get to the move tool and then move it around. Okay. You can also lower the opacity of this layer so you can see what you're getting inside. All right, so once you have your shape where you want it to be, we're going to use it as a stencil. So we're going to either, now one way you can select inside the shape, but what I'm going to do is a shortcut. I put my cursor on top of the layer that has the shape, and I'm going to hold down the command button. Okay, you can see that it adds a little rectangular shape, and I click. What you just told the computer to do is you told it to select everything that's in that layer. Okay, so you can see that there's marching ants around that layer. So if I make it invisible, you can see it a little bit better. So that's the shape I want. I go to the background and I hit, remember Command J, layer via copy. And there's my new shape. I can put this in the trash, and I can save this. I'm going to save it in my cropped folder. And it's going to be a Photoshop file. Okay, I'll do that one more time a little bit faster. Okay, here's my roller coaster from before. So if I use the shape tool, I'm going to make sure I'm on custom shape tool. I pick the shape I want. Again, I want something with a lot of space. So if I do something like a checkerboard like this, it doesn't have a lot of, it won't be a big stencil. Boats won't make sense, huh? Legacy shapes again. Frames. Yeah, see, that's going to be a hole. Don't want that. Ooh, this one's cool. Let's do that one. It's like a splotch. Use the move tool and move it over. Stretch it a bit. I don't need all those little dots. I just want the thing. I really just want the splotch in the middle. I don't want those little pieces. That looks really cool. I like that one. Okay, so I commit to it. I can lower the opacity. Yeah, that's going to get a good spot there. I am going to hold down the command button and click, and it made that selection. And I am going to go to the background, Command J, and then throw the other pieces in the trash. Don't need them. And then I'm going to go ahead and save it. Okay, so you can watch this part of the video a bunch of times to get kind of used to this. And so get them all cropped, all your shapes cropped. So what we're going to do now is we are going to make the shape of the wedge. And the shape of the wedge is going to be made from one of my pictures. So I did not crop this picture yet. I'm going to use this for the background of the wedge. So the trick is to get this wedge, cut this wedge out with this. Okay, so we're cutting out a wedge shape out of this. Okay, so first thing we do is we take the wedge. We are going to use the magic wand tool, and we're selecting inside the wedge. Okay, just inside. So if you find that it's selecting both inside and outside, you make sure that contiguous is checked. If it's not checked, you're going to have it selecting both inside and outside the wedge. So contiguous, checked. Okay, so right now marching ants are on the inside. I'm going to use the move tool, and I am going to move this wedge, just the inside of it, up on top of the beach picture. You can see that the wedge is really big compared to the beach picture. So if you wanted to not do it in this manner, I'm going to throw this in the trash for a sec. Let's go back to the wedge. You could, if you wanted to, make a copy of what you selected. Instead of just bringing it over, you can hit Command J next if you wanted to, and then just bring that layer over. It does the same exact thing. Okay, no difference. All right. Now I'm going to zoom out so I can see the edges of this wedge. So we're going to shrink this up. Now it's very, very important that we shrink this up without changing the proportion. So in other words, we want to make sure that we're not stretching it or squishing it, because it's very important that it keeps that proportion. So to prevent that from happening, you have the width up here on the top and the height, and you just want to make sure that that link is checked. If the numbers are not the same, I'm going to make them both 40. I'm going to force them to be the same. Then I'm going to hit the link, and hopefully, yeah, so that should hold it in place. Another thing you can do is hold the shift key down, and if you hold the shift key down, that will also make sure that it keeps the proportion. All right, so if I hold the shift key down just to, actually, if I hold the shift key down and the link is selected, it's doing the opposite. So actually, if you can do either or, you don't want to do both. So in other words, you want to either make sure that that link is checked or hold the shift key down. You don't want to do both. So just keep an eye on it. I'm going to lower the opacity down because with this particular picture, there's certain parts of this I want to get. I can rotate it a bit if I wanted to. Okay, so I got the water, I have some of the clouds, I have the little hut, I have some of the trees, I have the beach, the sand. Get more sand. There we go. So once I like it, you know, get it as probably as large as possible. I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to double check that the measurements are right. Okay. So what I want to do is the same process that I did before when I was using the shape tool. I'm using this as a template. So what I can do is I can select layer. There's two ways we're going to do this. I can select layer 1, hold down the command button, and select the whole thing. Then I can go to the background and hit Command J. So that's one way I can do it, and if you can see if I have the wedge shape. If I undo what I did, oops, too crazy. Pop this up, rotate it. So another thing that I can do, if I don't want to do that, again, I'm using this as a wedge, or as a template, I can select the outside of layer 1, the outside of my wedge, by using the magic wand tool. Okay? Then I can go to the background layer, unlock it, make layer 1 invisible for a second. So I unlocked layer 0 because if I hit delete now, it'll delete all the stuff around the outside. So review this video a couple of times if you need to, and this is how you are going to have the wedge. Okay, you want to make sure the wedge is the right size, and you are making sure that it is cut out. It cuts out one of the photos. Okay. Now that you cut the wedge out from one of your images, it might be a good idea to save this. So you can go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to call it Cropped Wedge. And the reason for this is that just in case you want to kind of go back to the drawing board after you do some more processes, you have this to go back to so you don't have to redo it. Like you might say, I want to realign all of my shapes, all of my layers on top of here. You want to redo it. You won't have to do this step again. Okay? So we are going to now take all of these images that we cropped and we're going to be bringing them over to our wedge here. Now to do that, you go one at a time. You're going to drag it using the move tool, drag it up into the cropped wedge and lower it down. And I just worry about shrinking it up for now, and I just put it off to the side. I just first get them all over there. Once it's brought over there, I can exit out. There. As you bring them over, you can X them out. piece of great. Another one. Okay. I think I have one more picture. Just bear with me for a sec. What's it called? I guess I didn't save it proper. No, no matter. All right. So if you think you have enough images, now we're going to rearrange them. As you look at these, if you feel like some of them are like too much of the same color, you can always apply a filter to it or change the color of it. So if I hit Command U, let's say that I want to change the color of the Statue of Liberty. Maybe I want to colorize it and make it like a bright red or a green or something like that. Just something different. You can always change your pictures if you want. All right. So feel free to do that. This one I'm going to leave alone. I think the roller coaster, again, you can go to filters if you want. And, you just probably don't want it to be too altered where you can't recognize it. So because there's a lot of detail to this picture, this might not be the best one for it, but it is available. All right. So what we're going to do is we are now going to start setting these things up. Right now it's a big, big mess. Don't worry about things being upside down because these images are all going to spin around. Also, don't worry about overlapping. You actually want to overlap. And don't worry about losing a lot of the background image, a lot of the beach. Don't worry about any of that. I mean, there might be some pieces you definitely want to get in there, like maybe I don't want to cover up that palm tree. So just make sure you don't cover up the palm tree. Interesting elements you want to kind of like have available, because I think like those paintbrushes will probably look pretty cool. You can change the order of these things. You can change the size of these things. So the order meaning if you wanted this the troll to be in front of the softball, you can change that. You just bring this softball down. Maybe you want the barbecue to be behind the troll too. So every image should be overlapping another image, and when you set these things up, it should be set up in sort of an interesting manner. Definitely want that shape to be in front. Now notice I do not care if these images are covered. It's okay if some of them are covered, and I also don't care if the edges are hanging off of the wedge. We're going to trim that up later. I think this will, you know what? I think the roller coaster will look really interesting in the middle. So I'm going to make it a bit smaller. Like that. It's here. So again, the size of these images, you can change the size and they should overlap. Images should definitely overlap one another. Okay, so once you have something kind of set up and you're kind of liking it, what you can do now is I would, if I were you, I'd save this image again. And I would save this image as full wedge. So, file, save as. And I'm going to save it as a Photoshop file. And the reason is once you save this, you can always go back to this. So let's say that we finish up our mandala and they're like, yeah, I think I want to move the troll over. I want it to be in a different spot. I want to rearrange them. You absolutely can. Okay, so once we have it saved and everything's all set, clearly we can't see the wedge anymore. So we're going to cut off all of the extra bits here. We are going to go to layer 0, which is the wedge, the one on the very, very bottom, and we're going to use the magic wand tool and we're going to select the outside. So when we select the outside, it selects everything but the shape of the wedge. So as we come up to different layers, I'll go to layer 5, which is the softball, and I hit delete on my keyboard. I go to each one and I'm hitting the delete button, and it's cutting off all of the stuff that's on the outside. Okay, just like that. I could put layer 1 in the trash. I'm not even using that anymore. It's at this point we are going to merge these layers together. So we're going to right click anywhere on top of any of these layers right here, and we're going to go down to where it says merge visible. We're not going to flatten it, because if we flatten it, what's going to happen? Oh, you know what? I think if we merge visible, yeah. So if we merge visible, we will be able to move this around. You can see the background's invisible. I'm going to undo this for a second. So as opposed to, if we flatten it, what it's going to do is it's going to make a white background. We don't want that. So it doesn't have a transparent background. So the white background's the way to go. I mean, the transparent background's the way to go. So to do that, we can merge visible. Okay. So the next step is we're going to bring this over to our template. All right. Now that we have our wedge assembled, now what we're going to do is assemble the mandala. So what we're going to do is open up the template that you should have downloaded. If you haven't downloaded it, you want to take care of that. So the idea is we're going to be placing the wedge on top of this template a bunch of times. So we're going to take the wedge, sorry, the filled wedge, and we're going to move it up on top of the template and drop it down. We are going to size it right, again, being very conscious about not changing the proportion. It should be at a 30-degree wedge. Now I'm zooming into this particular area because this needs to be straightened. And we also want it to be pretty large. Okay? When you put this on here, you don't want a teeny tiny wedge. You want a decently sized wedge. So we are going to have to do some maneuvering. We're going to have to do some rotation because right now it's not straight. So as we rotate it, we want that line, that edge, to be in line with that horizontal line. So if you find that you're struggling with this process, you can actually come up to the top here, and where the angle is, you can highlight it, and you can use the arrows up and down, and it'll nudge it by the hundredths of a pixel. You can also put your cursor on top of this icon, and you can drag it to the left and the right, and it'll move it like that for you. You see how I have it? I am holding down the click. I think I'm pretty close. I'm going to bring it down so I can see that line. Yeah, that's pretty close. A little bit more. This you want it to be pretty perfect. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so we're going to put this right along that line there. Zoom back out a bit. We're going to make a copy of this layer. So there's a couple ways you can make a copy. You can right click on the gray area here, and I think there's no, I guess it doesn't have it. Oh, duplicate layer right there. So you can duplicate it like that. You can also drag this on top of the new layer button like that if you wanted to make a new layer. And I'm going to show you a really cool way to make a new layer. I'm going to toss these guys in the trash for a sec. If you put your cursor on the move tool, if you put your cursor on here, you have this black arrow. if you hold down the Alt button, you now get this second little white arrow, and then you drag it. Sorry, I have to be on the picture, like that. So that's another way you can make a copy. So you want to make one copy. We're going to need 3 altogether, but we're going to go with 1 at a time. So this one's going to be right along the line here, but we need to rotate it because we want this to be a symmetrical image. So we want it to be a mirror image. So we're going to take this layer, we go to Edit, Transform, and we're going to flip it horizontally. Okay. So if we flip it horizontally, it is now a mirror image, but now we need to rotate it. There's actually a perfect way to rotate it so it fits in place. You do a little bit of math. So I'm just going to use this brush here. This here is 30 degrees. This here is 30 degrees. So if we were to try to solve this angle here, here, and here, the smiley face, we would take the 30 and the 30, which is 60, and we would subtract it from this measurement, which is 180. So to figure out what this angle is right here, we would take 180, which is a straight line, and we would subtract 30 and 30 more, which is 60. And so we're left with 120. So we can rotate this, and we're going to get to 120. Now it's going to be a negative number because it's rotating it counterclockwise. So you can see the number shows up as I rotate it, but you can put the number right here. So you can highlight it, put -120. Now here's the test. See how that fits right along there with no gaps? That means that it didn't change the shape. Everything was in line. Everything looks good. If it's not lined up real well, it's probably because maybe you stretched it out. So now I'm going to make another copy. I'm making a copy of the original. So I'm going to do it holding down the Alt button and dragging it. The reason why I made a copy of the original is that these two are mirror images. If I need to make another mirror image, it would be like flipping the flip. So it's going to end up being the average, like the way it was before. So here it's not flipped, flipped, not flipped. So the magic number here, undo the rotation, is that we need to rotate it so that this line here ends up perfectly vertical. So this is a right angle right here. Right? This is a right angle right here. So when we rotate this, we want to rotate it 90 minus 30. We're going to end up with 60. So it should be at 60 degrees. You can highlight it and put 60. So it should perfectly fit along the line, and all the pieces should fit. I'm going to slightly nudge it. See, there's a little bit of a white gap, but that's okay. I'm just going to squish it together a little bit. And I'm also going to check the edge of the circle. See, there's a little bit of spot there, so I'm going to move it up a bit and out. Okay, I like it. A little bit of a line, but that's okay. All right, that looks fantastic. Now, we can go ahead and do this 9 more times, or, whatever. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 more times, but we can avoid that. What we can do is we can select all these layers, hold down the Command button, select these 3 layers, right-click, and you can merge layers. Don't merge visible because it's going to merge it with the white background. But if you merge layers, it merges it into one piece. We can make a copy. We can rotate this, or transform, and flip it. Not rotate, sorry. We flip it, fit it in place. In a little bit. Then we can make merge these two layers together. Make a copy. Flip it vertically, up and down, and put it in place. So it goes by pretty quickly once you make your wedge. So hopefully you get it. A couple things you can double check. Double check the middle. If the middle is nice and even, then the rest of it should be nice and even. That looks like actually looks just like a snowflake in the middle. All right, and that is a done deal. You can merge these layers together as well. So then the last thing I'll talk about is the background. Like this white space around here, you're going to cover it up. Okay, so the last step of this process could be, you just want to add something in the background. So it could be as simple as just adding a color. So if I add a new layer, and I can just put a color in, something that's probably opposite, contrasting. And you could do something like that. You can also try gradients. Try a radial gradient, that'll be cool. So if you remember how to work with these gradients, start from the center, work out, go straight out. Let's see if we can maneuver this a little bit. Let's move the stops in together a little bit so that transition happens a little quicker. Let's try kind of a trial and error. Oh, that's kind of nice. You can reverse it. Yeah, so if you just wanted a simple gradient in the background, you could do something like that. Another thing you can do is you can actually just open up an image and have an image. Let's see, I have this abstract kind of composition here. So if you wanted to put your picture right on there, and actually to keep that square shape, you might be better off bringing this onto your picture. And so you have this in the picture in the back somehow. You can change the color. You don't like the color, it's too much blue. If you wanted to make it a different color, you can do that. One thing that I really like, actually I really like that color, is that you can actually make a symmetrical image out of a shape like this. So we could shrink this down on the template, and if I wanted to crop it into a square, I can do that. So let's do that first. So if I crop it into a square, I have a lot more kind of versatility with it. Okay, so let's bring that into the template. Bring this back down, throw this in the trash. There we go. So what I can do is I could put this in the quadrant like this. I could make a copy, flip it, I can merge these layers together, make a copy, flip it. So what I can do is I can make a symmetrical background in the same vein, and so that might look pretty nice as well. I can merge these layers together, and it's at this point if I wanted to try out a different color, because I really liked those orangey kind of colors from before. So I can change it like this. One last thing is if you wanted to put a little glow around your shape, You double click on the layer, and then you end up with this layer style, and you can put an outer glow. Select outer glow. If you click on it, it gives you the options. You can make it white. If you wanted it to be white instead, you can make it darker color. Let's make it white. And decrease the spread. Increase the opacity. If you just want to put a little like glow around it, that's kind of cool. Put noise, which makes it speckly. So if you like the glow, here it is with it. Here it is without it. If you wanted to add, change, like I said, if you wanted to change it to a different color, maybe the yellow looked good after all. Lower the size a bit. And make it the way you like. Like I said, there it is with it, without it. I kind of like it. It gives it a little bit of dimension. And that is a done piece of artwork. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed this process. It is a little long, a little time consuming. I do apologize for the length of the video, but you can always just jump to different parts of the video as you need to. Alright, have fun!